All right, welcome back to the show. And I'm super excited for today's episode because I've gotten the sense that a lot of real estate agents and brokers in general have wanted to go a certain route when it comes to their real estate career, especially as they extrapolate their careers beyond just real estate sales. And that's they want to get into real estate development and really kind of helping the community that way, right? So even above and beyond just investing, but actual development. So today we are going to be answering that question for a lot of agents and a lot of brokers, and basically talking a little bit more about the synergy between kind of being an agent and also being a developer and how that can kind of work together. And our guest today is Jason Hyman, real estate broker and real estate developer and urban planner. So Jason,
All
welcome to
right.
the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you put that last part on the urban planner. A lot of people forget or don't even know what that is. So,
Right. Yeah, and that's actually really interesting you brought that up because that's one of the things we definitely I'm interested to talk a little bit about is what it entails to be an
okay.
urban planner because that really stood
Okay.
out to me when I was looking through your resume and your profile as well. But just before we get into all of that, Jason, man, you're doing a lot in your community here in Houston. But for a lot of people who maybe they don't know who you are, they haven't kind of checked out your content online. Would you mind just kind of breaking down like your story of how you got into real estate, kind of what you're doing now, and some of the projects that maybe you're working on?
Sure. So, I won't take too long. I pretty much I feel like I can sum it up fairly quickly. I got into real estate because I really at the time I'm like, this is a way for me to get Sally Mae and the student loans off my back. And so I got my license in college. This was 15 plus years ago, and I practiced part time, really focused on paying to put myself through school. And upon graduating my bachelor's, I end up working for the city of Houston Housing and Community Development Department, and I still have my license. But I was kind of practicing real estate in a different way, working for them. We were building, parks, we were building apartments, we were building homes, we were rehabbing homes, and I was at the middle of it, being like a financial player, analyst, and things like that. But nonetheless, being a part of that made me say, you know, I I want to. This is what I want to do myself, not for the city, not for this is what I want to do for myself. So I end up uh, going to school for urban planning and just started really trying to figure out creative ways to use my license other than just a transaction. Or let me not say my license, the knowledge I've gained from having the license. And so that brings me here today. I left the city. I went into banking for some time, at a high level, underwriting pretty much, and left banking and started our office. Took a few years, of course, to figure out what the heck I was even doing. I had no desire to really be a broker or anything like that at the time. It really came out of necessity. I felt like I couldn't find an office that I fit. So I like let me go and create the space, and I'm pretty sure there's others like me. And fast forward to today, here we are. I have about 5 agents here in the office. We're hoping to get to maybe 10 or 15 by the end of this year. I keep it small so I'm accessible and can really support us. And then about a year or two ago, we started a nonprofit development company. So I took my urban planning experience, my city experience, my real estate experience, and I gathered some people together and I said, hey, let's do something apart and aside from what we do day to day, to put value back into communities because we're by nature we're extracting value for people, but how do we put the value back in the community? And I just so happen to live in Third Ward. If folks are familiar with Trey, so to speak, it was a place nobody wanted to be in, and then for whatever reason, it blew up. Right, it's right close to the city, and before you knew it, we saw real estate agents from all over the city, and seems like country showed up in our backyard, and now it's this place that's really, um, gentrifying. It's a good thing, but it's where we are. So
Awesome, man. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of different things in the real estate space, and it's really unique. And I really haven't seen too many people to do these things, right? With a certain background. I think a lot of people when they get into real estate, they might think that there's a lot of, they want to get into maybe urban planning, or they want to get into,
Mm.
development, like we were just talking about, but they don't really know kind of what the direction is. So I don't know if you can maybe touch a little bit on like your urban planning background and kind of what actually entails, that job, right? And what are some of the things that you actually did, and if it's, helpful for, your agent
Yeah.
career, or if the other way around, if an agent career can help that career as well.
No, absolutely. So it's funny you say like we do sometimes kind of wander around in the industry, right? We
Mm,
know how to get to a closing, but most of us are
right.
like, how do I fill in some of those lulls? How do I keep my pipeline filled? Um, Things like that. I was fortunate enough that when I was in grad school or in college, I was working. I was licensed and I was working for the city of Houston, and that kind of perfect storm helped me a lot to see the industry from a different perspective than
Mhm.
just selling. And so I noticed a lot of agents come in, we really don't know what we want. Honestly, we want to make money, but
For
we
sure.
don't really know, you know, our why.
Mm,
Right? Having some a why behind why you want to make the money, and we don't really know the direction that we want to go. We're kind of everywhere. So I'll say first and foremost, before I touch on urban planning, is just for those agents that are getting in the industry, or even if you've been in the industry, is find out where you're good. So really where you can provide value to a team, a partner, so on and so forth, right? Not where you're good in terms of processing a contract, but like, are you do you know an area very well? Do you know a specific niche very well? So on and so forth. For me, urban planning provided like a different lens because um, what urban planning pretty does is it creates the box that all of us are really kind of practicing in, right? Urban planners are at the city level for the most part, right? You have some that are at the city level and some that are on the ground, but no matter where they are, they're influencing like the policies that shape the built environment that we sell,
mm,
right? So if you're selling land, what you can and can't do with that land. If you're selling a property, what you can and can't do in that neighborhood. All that kind of ties back to urban planning, the development of cities, right? So me understanding those things, I'm able to go in neighborhoods and right away pick up on things right away, know how to address them. If there's something that I want done in my neighborhood, I know how to leverage the city and the tools and resources they have as well. Not I want to say to get my way, but to help myself, my clients, and the neighborhoods that we're in. And so for me, that became a way for me to be a resource. And so that helped all the way around, right? It helped me with my clients and it helped me with my growth and figure out other ways that I can present myself and make money in this industry. So
yep. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. So I think it's really interesting because when most people think of urban planning, right, or they maybe think of a career in urban planning, they think, they have to work for the city. And a lot of people
yeah,
are turned off by that. So kind of from your
yeah.
experience, is that the only way I think people get into it? Or,
Um,
obviously kind of what you guys do privately, there is a
mo-
different route.
most urban planners would tell you like we fell into the industry because a lot of people don't know about urban planning as something you can learn or practice, right? But their whole organizations, the American Planning Association is probably the biggest. The
Mhm.
Urban Land Institute, there's urban planners there. And so what you'll see is that I like to break us into two categories. There's technical planners
Mhm.
and then what I consider to be tactical planners. And so, like technical planners are the planners that you're speaking of. They are the rule makers. Think of them like that. Versus you take me, I'm more of a tactical planner. I want to leverage the rules or break them, right? To help inform my my technical planners that are making the rules. So I play a different role. And you see us in a lot of different aspects. Some of us are just on the ground, just concerned citizens in their community. Some of us are consulting developers, right? When I work with someone that wants to buy land and build, helping them understand what they can build or different ways they can profit rather than just in Houston, we're used to just seeing people throw up the traditional subdivide, three townhomes, let's make this money and we're gonna get down the road, right? We're plugged in, or plugged into a lot of other things that are going on and practices across the country. So you see it happen that way. External, helping someone where you're not within their organization, and then you also have planners that are working in development in building firms now, right? Builders
Right.
in their firms now. And so you have that, and you're helping them map out their land or find out where the growth patterns are, where they should be, buying land or whatever the case is. So it's a lot of ways you can come at it. The discipline is what we call interdisciplinary anyway, right?
Right.
It comes from a lot of different angles because it affects the way we live, and everybody has an opinion or um, some insight to that, rather, right?
Right.
So, just being trained as an urban planner just really trains you how to utilize that insight in different ways.
Right. Absolutely. And I think there's, when people think of this being a developer, right? I think a lot of agents, when they get into the industry, they want to make that difference, right? They want to be the interdisciplinary kind of expert or business owner where they're able to make a difference in their communities, right? Reinvest back into back into their cities, reinvest back into kind of building it the way that they think is the most efficient way. And a lot of times I just think, the person that does that is the developer. But from kind of what I'm hearing now, there's a slight difference between somebody who's just solely developer and maybe somebody who's a little bit more interdisciplinary, who's thinking kind of the
Absolutely.
whole view down. So maybe like what's the
Absolutely.
difference between those two?
Absolutely. So I'm going to say the difference, honestly, to me, from my perspective, the difference is you have developer and investor. And a
Mhm.
lot of people, and from my opinion, that call themselves developers, they really truly are at the core investors. You are purely profit driven, and that's okay. But you have to recognize that that's what you are. And once you do, you probably find some easier ways to profit from your money or play a
Mhm.
role in development, right? But if you're a developer, you should be thinking full circle and comprehensively. It's just I think it doesn't trickle down to the small guy or individual enough.
Right.
But when you look at like your huge firms, your midways and stuff, you look at like City Center. That's a comprehensive developer. That Midway is a developer, right? They're not thinking about let's just put retail there. They're thinking through all of it. How do people walk back and forth? How's the car gonna look? What is the aesthetic? What's around it? They're thinking through all those different pieces before they actually, invest a dollar or before they actually go vertical with some things. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you end up over the long run with more profit, not just in
Mhm.
that project because you have so many uses and things going on, but like how many times can you get away with just extracting profit and not making a community whole before the community says we don't want you here?
Right.
What I'm saying?
Yep.
If I'm trying to get to that point of being a midway, for instance, no one's gonna, sign off on that for me, And in a lot of instances, you're gonna need support from
Yep.
different organizations. And if they think that what you're doing is not there, it's not in the context of them. Because you said earlier, it's like, I want to improve the communities. And we
Mhm.
start thinking and we don't really think about the people that's there. We think we're helping.
Right.
We think we're helping them. Hey, I created some houses, I did this, I raised your property values. But what did you harm? Or what was measurable that you helped other than your pocket, right? And you
Right.
have to start thinking through those things. And we're seeing it across the board at high commercial levels. We're just not seeing it down on the ground as much. So
Right.
that's something that we personally has been focused on trying to educate people on.
Right. And that's really, I think it's a really helpful thing. I haven't seen a lot of people do that, right? So whenever I look, I did a little bit of just personal research for this. on like certain real estate development companies and like what that like entails and what developer is. And whenever I think of a developer, I really think, like you were saying, like, bigger companies, right? It's not just somebody who's kind of like building an apartment or building like a row of
Mhm.
townhouses, right? I'm thinking, right here we're in Houston, right? The Woodlands, right? Howard Hughes company, different companies like that, where they're actually developing like entire cities, entire
But
living
but check,
spaces.
we all are developers though, right? Because at the end of the day, we all can be developers. Doesn't matter what skill you're on, you're still impacting lives, right?
Mm,
So we all can be developers, but like, and it only takes one, right? When you think of those guys you just named, they started with one project and it
yeah,
was successful. And then it's just in a matter of 5 to 10 years, you're right. They own half of cities in certain cases, right? So
yeah,
I mean, if you're thinking that way, good. If you're not, it kind of turns. It's no different than the transactional nature of your license. You're always going to be chasing the next deal.
yeah.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then you mentioned you mentioned earlier about that this is not something that an individual can gonna do like on their own, right? You have to be using the assistance of partners, other organizations, coordinating certain things with, even the city and the government as well. So, you're looking at some of these big development projects, right? And some of these big projects that people like in their mind they want to do. So, from like just an individual standpoint, what are some, they always talk about building a team. So what are some people, some organizations that like a specific real estate agent or somebody who might not even be licensed? I guess this applies to anybody, but really, if you're a real estate agent, like what are some people, organizations they should be connecting with, uh, people they should be networking with, essentially kind of putting together an organization or a team to start with some of these projects.
Um, so I won't assume like you say, everybody knows, but I mean, I think the basics are at the core, right? Definitely having you a good lender that understands the niche that you're getting into and that they're comfortable with it because it's going to make your life easier. Um, your architect in the same
Mm,
fashion, your architect or designer and builder. Sometimes they're the same person or same company, but builder and making sure same thing. Are they are how knowledgeable are they in your niche? Because they are all different, just like lenders have different products. They are all different in their focus. So those are your two main ones for sure. Um, Folks like your engineers, your inspectors, and things like that, a lot of times will come in with the architect, but it's good to have them, have good relationships with them as well. Now, outside of like that core team, right? And of course, you have yourself. You can market your properties or you can
right.
build agents and stuff around. But apart and aside from, let's say, your core team like that, you're definitely gonna need some folks outside that. So you're gonna need some investors that
Mhm.
absolutely understand same way, because you're gonna need some equity, and at some point you're gonna run out of your own money, or
Yep.
you may not start with your own money. So you're gonna need some investors that understand and trust you. Likely, it may come from your investment clients if you have some. You tell them what you're doing. They just want to make the money, so be a good steward of their money, and put things in front of them. uh, you are definitely going to want to have some good relationships with the city of Houston, their planning and development department. And so make sure that you have the planning and development department, but there's really a couple different layers to that. Yes, you have permitting. I think everybody understands permitting, but there's an actual planning department where they're helping curate the rules that the permitting department actually goes by, right? They're always seeking, feedback and things like that to improve Houston. And then there's the planning commission who actually makes the decisions at the end of the day. And you need to know and understand that process and have relationships with those people so they can help provide the guidance for you to move things along. So like that in a nutshell, that's a tight team, tight, kind of have to have. And then beyond that, depending on what area you're in, check out like there. If you're in Houston, check out that area is like super neighborhood, or that civic association in the neighborhood that you're in. People stray away from them because they think that they're going to kill things or they're going to push back or whatever the case is. But a lot of times, if you can find some synergy and collaborating, it actually can be a help in getting like things like your variances pushed through and stuff like that, so you can build what you want. So it's just about how you approach it. But if you can touch, have that core team, understand the city dynamic, and then make sure you're making relationships within the neighborhood, then a lot of times you're okay. And so you can go to some of those organizations I mentioned earlier, and that's where they'll be. So you have Urban Land Institute is interdisciplinary. There's a lot of folks there. Um, American Planning Association may not have all those folks there, but they're in that lane as well. And then we started the Third Ward Real Estate Council, which is a chapter of a broader organization that we founded, and we're specifically catering to emerging developers.
Hmm.
So who you're talking about, that's what we consider to be emerging developers, people who are just starting out or trying to get going and want to scale. You can reach out and kind of connect with organizations like ours where we're putting those people in the room in the same way so you can start building your team.
That's awesome, man. That's really helpful information that you just shared. I don't think a lot of people they even understand some of these layers, like you were saying, right? You have the permitting department, and then there's the planning department, and then there's the planning commission that actually makes the decisions. Some people they just think there's one organization, there's one piece of that, one branch of that that makes all the decisions, and they think permitting. And whenever they think of that, they think headaches, right? Getting around that and limits.
Yeah, yeah. Permits, they're just enforcing it. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like it's just like the judicial system and legislative. And when we think
Mm,
about our society, like if
good
you're
analogy.
mad at the permitting, that's because you're not on the front end talking to the people that's actually making the rules.
Yep, absolutely. Things can change. That's a really good analogy, by the way. So I think for a lot of people, that was the analogy that made it click for them to kind of understand
Yeah,
that these things are flexible, right? Especially like you were saying, if you are actually being genuine and intentional about adding value to the community and making the living spaces better and more accessible, and doing it in a way where it's actually improving upon the current limitations of the certain zoning and permitting that they've already have in place.
yeah. Most time you'll find like most cities are very supportive,
Mhm.
and very rarely do they have, especially like the smaller the guys, reach out to them. Like the big guys understand it, right? They're reaching out early and often, right? They're getting them involved early and often because they don't want any problems in their project, right?
Mhm.
Um, we don't. So it's one of those things. They're very welcoming. So the city's changing our development guidelines as we speak, so that we can be a more dense, walkable city, right? But um, they they're more than happy a lot of times to sit down with you. But a lot of times, like I say, we don't sit down. They want to understand. They want to understand what doesn't work because they actually want it to be a dense, walkable city. So if you're trying to do something you can't, it's like don't abandon it. Don't leave the neighborhood. Don't just throw your hands up. Like go and kind of work that out. A lot of times there are exceptions. There are things that can happen. You know, beyond just quitting, so to speak.
Yep, absolutely. You always have to go fight for it, right? You have to actually
Yeah,
take the proactive action to go out there and take the chance, right? Reach out to the city, actually take a chance on that because, like you were saying, there's not a lot of smaller developers that even believe, whether if it's belief in themselves or belief in what they're doing, that they're actually willing to reach out, right? So don't limit yourself. Is I think it's a really good lesson here.
this framework we're talking about is universal.
Yep.
I literally I go and do consulting in different cities. They all have some type of planning department, permitting department, economic development. Like it's universal. You can go almost anywhere once you understand the framework and just plug in and do what you're gonna do.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So another thing I think I really wanted to kind of touch on was, for the real estate agent, right? Somebody who's licensed, kind of being an active agent, and like we mentioned, the smaller guy, right? So those are kind of what we consider as smaller developers, emerging developers, people who are
Mhm.
even aspiring. So what are some things that an agent can do to start participating in these projects, right? You mentioned, I think earlier in the podcast that representing developers and being kind of consultants with them in some of their projects. So, what are some ways that agents can kind of get into those projects, can start learning it maybe from a consulting or representation standpoint,
Okay.
and then move into it?
Okay. I think one of the best ways for an agent wanting to break into this is to be a damn good agent, meaning find the deals, right? Hit the phones, use the information and data we have to find the deals. If you're an agent and you would realize that in the neighborhood you're working in, there's a lot of new development and, and construction and things like that. Go find that lot for a decent price. Go and as not to represent that owner, right?
Hmm.
Be the buyer at this point. Would you sell it to me for this price? You almost at this point kind of are playing quasi wholesaler, right?
Hmm.
If I can find a deal or an opportunity rather, now I can go to that builder, that developer and say, hey, look, can we do this together?
Hmm.
Can we do this together? I want to learn. Here's what I can give. Maybe I'll, if your broker's okay with it, I'll reduce the commission on the back end when we sell it, or hey, I'll handle these responsibilities during construction, so on and so forth. Something to reduce costs. So I think that's probably the. It sounds like a lot, but that should be easy for an agent if if you're out humping doing what you do.
Right.
Um, and beyond that, um, just if that's not in your wheelhouse, um, try to maybe find you a development or an investor client and be observant. Right, just ask them. Can you ask them questions? Yeah, a lot of them like to talk about themselves. I'm gonna tell you that right now. They don't have a lot of time, but they like to talk about themselves. So if you're helping them, like I say, you're turning deals for them, you're getting stuff at some point in time, like, hey, Mr. John, I sold 20 houses for you last year. We made a lot of money together, but like, how are you doing this? Like, just be forward and ask them. A lot of times, they look at you as can make them more money if they educate you, right? But a lot of them aren't going to stop and try to force that education on you because they're like, I don't want to slow, I don't want to slow anything up. But once they know you're open to it, a lot of times it's just going to come. So I think those are probably the two easiest ways, um, for agents to get started, to get going. Apart aside from just, you know, cold turkey, go find you a team and bump your head, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, and I think, you probably will agree on this is a lot it's better if the agent ends up doing what you mentioned, the first two things, which is representing developer clients and then finding deals for those investors or developers first before they go cold turkey into it, right? Because that way they have more experience, they know the industry better, they know the processes better.
Yeah,
It's better. They have more connections even that they can riff off of and potentially get put as people in their team as well.
yeah, absolutely. It helps on the financing end, especially if you
Mm.
participated in a few deals. Now your financing is a little easier because you can show that to a lender, and that's going to make them comfortable. So, it's all the way around. It's a probably an easier start, but it's not. It's I know people that start cold turkey, and I don't want to say they don't have any problems, but like there's problems at each stage, and no matter which approach you take. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier as well. It's just like if you're kind of consulting with a developer, there's a lot of things, especially kind of what you do specifically with helping them with their own planning, right? With your urban planning background. So, if an agent kind of wanted to do that, is that something that they can kind of pursue currently, or is this something that maybe they want to do a little bit more training on before they start pursuing those type of clients and those kind of projects?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. So I think the answer is like twofold.
Hmm.
One is be resourceful as an agent, helping those clients, right? Their
Yeah.
goal is profit. So what any way that you can help increase their profit by being resourceful is going to help. But in order to be resourceful, it may require you to do some training. So there are like organizations like ours that I mentioned, or even as Plan Edison is a site. They have like certification courses that you can take. So if you are prepared to like go get a 4 year degree or a master's or something like that, there are some options out there where you can at least take some certifications and get an understanding. And I would focus in if I was an agent. I would focus in on things like policy. I would get
Hmm.
some training in policy, how to look it up, how to research it, things like that. I would get some training in pro forma modeling. Understand how the money flows in a project for sure.
Hmm.
Those probably are the two most important things. And then I may get some soft training around like engagement, like research and engagement, meaning like how do I get information from the community that I'm in order to create great products, so to speak,
Right.
instead of just thinking in my own head what's good. I may get we do it a lot. We do it a lot.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I may get a little bit of training or background in that.
Yeah, and just overall kind of skill sets based on, like you were mentioning, policies, right? That's very important. Just understanding what's going on, how policies are made, and then also how the money flows, right? That's a big one. A lot of people don't
Yeah,
understand how these developers are actually making money, and maybe that's something you can touch on, right? So, what are I know you don't have to go into like too much detail on this, but like for somebody who might not understand how these projects you know, are actually bringing developers profit. They don't maybe understand like, are they selling these, projects? Are they just leasing them out? Is it a mixture of both? What kind of
yeah.
how are they making money?
So I mean, every deal is for sure different. You know, if and let me say like to connect that. So we're talking about policy, for instance.
Hmm.
That's not just understanding the rules, but it's also understanding like how to fix the land and environment because you it kind of gives you an inclination of what's coming, right? Where are the capital investments coming, right? Because that's where we want to be, right? And so, how do I make money from that knowledge and things like that? So, there's a couple ways as a developer. One, if you have some ownership in the project, I got some equity stake in the project, period. So, wherever it sells or if there's cash flow, I should get a check. Uh, Second is, oftentimes there's a developer's fee. So as a developer, most time part of the development, part of the cost of building and putting everything together, there's a fee for that. Somebody has to corral everybody and make sure things are moving accordingly. Developers sometimes are paid on a fee like that. And so like those are probably your two main ways. Um, a good developer is going to get paid probably on all three. Even in my own projects that I'm financing, and a bank will probably want to see it as well, that I'm taking some fee from the project as a developer, right? So I can't keep doing my job if I'm not, you know, compensated for it. Um,
Right.
and then I probably get some cash flow,
Hmm.
and then of course at some point in time there's some exit, and that exit may be an all-out sale, like we just totally give up control of it to another party, or it may be partial, right? I may have just sold some interest in the project. 30% out, sold 30% of it for $400,000 or something along those lines. So
Interesting.
it's different ways to tweak it. Just all depends on the deal. You know,
Yeah.
um, so
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So basically, kind of breaking it down and just recapping, right? It's the developer's fee, it's the cash flow on the equity that you own, and then also the actual equity yourself, and being able to sell portions of it or all of it if you choose to. So
Correct.
it's very dynamic business model, right? You have the fee, you have your cash flow, and you have the appreciation from equity. Versus, if you're an investor, in just a like single family home, sometimes you might get the fee. I don't really think the fee kind of comes into play unless you're an agent kind of listing your own property. But cash flow is really kind of a small piece of that. They're really just using that to pay off the rental property, and then really kind of making it more of an appreciation play. So I think being you know developer, you can kind of see the two similarities and then also some of the differences between the two as well if you're kind of
And,
investor minded.
and depreciation. Let's not forget depreciation. That's a big one. You guys are making some money, having some ownership in property, as you know, taking those
Yep.
depreciation credits and stuff on taxes is major. It's major. So that's a big thing. And I'm going to say too, you asked how what's some ways of things to learn, and I
Mhm.
thought, I find a lot of us go to closing and we get title commitments and things like that and HOADs, and like we really don't ever really truly read them thoroughly.
No.
Okay, a lot of times we pass it on to the client or their attorney or whatever the case is, but like start reading those title commitments. Start reading some of those HOA docs, man. It'll blow your mind some of the stuff you see, and you start asking questions. That makes that's you start to become more resourceful. So just something popped in my head.
That was good. That's actually very practical, right? So that's something that an agent can do, right? Anytime they have a closing, just take the extra effort, right? If that's something that you actually want to do, is get into development. Start learning some of these things just from things that you're already doing. You're not really going out there taking a 4 hour course
Yeah,
every day. So just little things like that, right? Being resourceful. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess like another thing just kind of popped into my mind as well, talking a little bit more about developing and maybe getting into it. Is there any, I guess like this will be a little bit more local specific if it does apply, but is there any essentially like prerequisite kind of licensing or certifications that you would need to do, or is this just something that maybe recommended or anything like that?
Like for development.
Right. Yeah, just for development.
No, man. I mean, Houston is one of those places like it is area specific. You're right. Like in other places, you do have to have licenses or they have commissions, but like in Houston, they're like it's free market. They're like if you're not a good developer, the market will let you know because you will be, bankrupt. But no, there's nothing. There's no prerequisite or requirement. Literally in Houston, like anybody, it is your future is in your hands. Like anybody can be a developer, and you can do it on whatever scale you choose to do, for sure.
That's awesome. So I like that. I think, open market, it's good if it provides like you were saying, the emerging developers a good opportunity as well to start learning, start, practicing, start getting the reps in, and being a part of these projects as well. So if you're, in Houston, that's open market. It's not as difficult as you might have thought, right? The perceived
Right.
difficulty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're on the residential side right now with the demand in housing, it's hard to lose, right? If the numbers work, it's hard to lose. It's hard to lose.
Yeah, lots of new builds coming up in Houston, right? That's what we're seeing. Bridgeland, definitely one, and then just you know, getting some of this knowledge, right? Just start learning from these people.
And I mean, you're right. There's a lot of new builds, but when you think about it, where are they? The bulk of them, they're out, past Highway 6, past
Yep.
Beltway. There's not too much inside the Beltway, or especially inside the loop. So, like, if
Hmm.
you can find a niche or some foothold inside the loop where you can be more walkable, where you can not use your car as much and things like that, like it's gold. It's
Right.
gold. Right now you have the city of Houston, Mayor Turner declared 10 complete communities. So you have the city kind of focusing in these areas, these are great areas to go in and be a part of the fabric of rebuilding, really truly rebuilding these communities.
Yeah. Yeah, like the term gentrification, right? I don't know if anybody's
Hmm.
most people have probably heard of this term, but it's redeveloping. It's almost like it's not developing on raw virgin land. It's just going back and also improving it, like you said, walkability, right? If it's more kind of pedestrian focused, I think a lot of people are moving in that direction.
Right.
People are liking that, so I think being in the development space is really interdisciplinary. It's a big kind of like overall view on what's going to help the people. What are the people in this community going to feel more valuable to them? And kind of almost thinking of like people's thinking patterns, right? Like what actually works good in a physical environment, but it has to relate back to like people's psychological and thinking
Right.
patterns as well. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah, so it's yeah,
So
it's
it's a,
both internal and external.
it sounds like you're ready to build, go and build some stuff. You got some good questions. Sound like you got it all, got it there. So that's good, man.
Well, I appreciate it, Jason. I appreciate you being here today as well and sharing your knowledge and value with us. I'll be honest, this is a topic that I'm really fascinated with and I'm really interested in. I did a lot of my own research beforehand as well. But I really appreciate your time and you for being here and sharing your value. For anybody listening or viewing this that want to maybe follow you and kind of see some of the things that you're up to, maybe some of the content that you put out, what are some of the best ways for people to kind of reach out? Is it YouTube, Instagram, different platforms?
That's a good question. So, you can reach me directly. Probably best any social media platform at Jason T. Hyman. Um, you can check out our real estate office and the things that we're doing, how we practice, notjustanagent.com. And then for those that are out and really wanting to learn more and get more involved in the development space, especially as it pertains to like Interloop here and in other cities across the country, go out to at DT3M Fund or DT3M.com. And we have a campaign there that's pushing, kind of directing people and giving some folks guidance there. So that's where the conference later this year is under. So
Awesome. Awesome, Jason. Thanks for sharing that. Make sure to go check this out if you're interested in developing or learning some of this information or digging deeper into it. We're going to leave all of that information in the description in the show notes down below. So make sure to go check that out. But before I let you go, Jason, is there any last thoughts you kind of want to leave with us and share with us before I let you sign off?
no, man, I just really want folks. I think the strongest thing I can say is definitely if this is a space you're in Houston, even if you're not in Houston, you see this and you want to learn more. It is something you want to get connected with. Um, Come to our Lost Spaces conference. This year is April 28th through the 30th. We're going to start things off with a networking kickoff on Friday. Saturday is a day of classes and workshops. And then Sunday, we're taking a commercial corridor and we're doing some actual visualizations on that corridor, like of what it could be and how you can get started. So, quite simple. This is our second year. So, quite similar to last year, you literally can walk in on one day and walk out with the team ready to go.
That's powerful, man. So if you're in the Houston area, make sure to check that out. And I think I'm
Absolutely.
going to be checking that out personally. So thanks for sharing that, Jason. And thank you again for coming on the podcast, sharing your knowledge, and for listeners tuning in. I want to thank you again for being here with us. And we'll see you guys next time. Take care.